I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue.
Welcome to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, powered by Jack's Angels, where we talk about your experiences, advocacy news, research, and today's heroes for kids. We are here to bring hope to the unthinkable but real experience of a child diagnosed with cancer. Jack's Angels' advocacy mission is to provide a voice for children with cancer to effect change for a more hopeful future for those to come. Childhood Cancer Talk Radio starts right now. Here is your host, Janet Demeter.
Hello and welcome. This is Janet Demeter. You're listening to TogiNet.com, and I'm your host for Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where every child is a life, not a number. If you're new to our community or haven't had a direct experience with childhood cancer, you may be wondering, what does she mean by that? Of course, we know that all children are people and not numbers. Childhood Cancer Talk Radio is dedicated to education and awareness, first and foremost, as well as providing support, understanding, and comfort to our affected listeners. So why is awareness so important? The issues affecting our children with cancer are the reflections of larger problems in our society today, our medical research system, and the values that govern commerce in general. To illustrate briefly, I'll use the example of brain tumors, the leading cause of death in children diagnosed with cancer. We've known about them for a long time. Neil Armstrong's daughter died of DIPG, the second most common pediatric brain tumor, in 1962, and since then, we've made no progress in saving these children's lives from certain death. About 300 children in the U.S. alone are diagnosed with it each year, and they all sit in their own personal death row because our system does not value their lives. The promise of quick returns in drug sales with investment dollars rules our medical research system, even with our tax dollars that are designated for cancer research with the National Cancer Institute. In fact, the NCI, and you'll hear me say this a lot, allocates less than 4% of its research budget to target pediatric research, while cancer is the leading disease cause of death in children in the United States. Ironically, most scientists agree that if we were to invest in research for the most resistant pediatric cancers, we would probably be much closer to curing it. And as great scientific discoveries invariably bring new industry, oh my goodness, we'd create jobs, of course, and ultimately benefit the economy. But who is the patient here again? Our kids? We're always focusing on the economy, and in this case, not only is it ridiculous, it's just plain wrong. In an area of pediatric medicine that has so many gaps and the need for a cure is so urgent, our own FDA, out of the virtue of protecting us, makes it very difficult for parents to venture into the realm of natural and holistic medicine that begs for exploration when you're going to lose your child. Our guest today, Tracy Ryan, found herself looking for alternatives and adjunct therapies that could possibly save her daughter Sophie's life, who was diagnosed at only 8.5 months with optic pathway glioma, a brain cancer with poor prognosis for vision and for life. After using cannabis oil in combination with her chemo protocol, Sophie's tumor had shrunk by over 90%, and she's now become a medical miracle, and her vision has been completely saved. This inspired the birth of CannaKids. CannaKids patients range in age from 8 months to 85 years old and have illnesses ranging from cancer to epilepsy, autism, PTSD, Crohn's disease, pain disorders, and more. Using a team of oncology nurses to guide in each patient's dosing protocol and tracking each patient closely, the patients have found relief from ailments and in some cases complete remission from otherwise terminal diseases. So with the help of consulting scientists, they've formulated designer strains of cannabis oils with potencies ranging from 69 to 85% that are now available to the public. Tracy, if you're there, and I hope you are, we're honored to have you with us today on the show. And what an incredible story.
Thank you so much. It has definitely been one of those roller coaster last 3 years. And if anybody told me what I was going to be doing today before my daughter was diagnosed, I would have told them they were absolutely crazy. It has been one of the hardest. It has been absolutely the hardest 3 years of my life. It has also been the most rewarding.
Wow. Yeah. So how did you initially even find it? Or maybe I should back up and say, how did you realize there was something amiss with little Sophie? I mean, 8.5 months. What was going on?
She was so tiny and so perfect, and she was just the most beautiful child, super chubby, ate great, slept great, never had a cold. And then one day her left eye started shaking back and forth. And after a chain of doctor's visits, all which happened in a week, Monday was her pediatrician, Tuesday was ophthalmology, Wednesday was neurology, and by Friday she was getting an MRI. Saturday we got the phone call from her pediatrician letting us know that they had found a brain tumor in her brain, and that by Monday morning we would need to be going into oncology to talk to them about inserting a portacath into our tiny baby's chest so they could pump her full of chemo every week. And I think it was probably like 4 or 5 days after this. I was completely devastated. I wasn't eating. I was barely sleeping. I immediately had the worst case of vertigo I'd ever had in my entire life. Wow. I was having horrific dizzy spells. I mean, this child, my whole life, all I wanted to be was a mom. That's all I ever wanted, was a little girl of my own. And now I had her, and now she's sick. And I decided, I had owned at the time and still do, albeit we only have one client. I owned a media company where we specialized in building websites and social media. And so I've always loved Facebook. I've always loved being involved in Facebook. And I've always believed in the power of prayer. So I created Sophie's Facebook page called Prayers for Sophie. And literally within 8 hours, she had 950 fans due to the support that I had from my online Facebook mommy community. And one of the mothers in one of these groups that I was very active in that focused on children and moms, and we just, thousands of women giving each other advice and support, she shared one of our posts to her page, woman at the time who I'd never met but since had become very good friends with, and Anna Pello, who was in Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein's film The Business of Being Born, saw the post. And Anna Pello was one of the doulas, the midwives in their film that was about, natural childbirth. And she contacted my friend Vanessa, and she told Vanessa, she's like, look, Ricky and Abby are doing another film about how cannabis oil works for pediatric cancer. You should have Tracy contact her. I actually tried for a natural childbirth with Sophie because of that very movie, and had met Abby when I was 6 months when I was 6 months pregnant with Sophie. After I literally fan stalked her after she sat on a panel at a pregnancy awareness month event here in Los Angeles, and I had already had this weird, overwhelming feeling that that God had done this to me for a reason. I had had this weird intuition moment where I looked at my husband and I said, babe, I don't ask me why I'm getting this feeling or this message. I've had these experiences periodically through my life where I would just feel something and it would happen. And I looked at my husband and I said, Sophie has a message and I'm her messenger, and I don't know what that message is yet, but I can promise you I'm not going to stop until I figure out what it is. And I said, I really believe our daughter's going to be okay, and that this has happened to her for some greater reason. I was like, I have no idea what that reason is, but I plan on finding it. And literally, I think it was within 24 to 48 hours of me saying those very words to my husband that I was on the phone with Abby, or on email first, and then on the phone with Abby discussing cannabis oil. And prior to this, we'd had probably 20 people reach out to us on Facebook through my husband's old roommate that were over in Israel and India, and they were telling us, cannabis. But this was, almost 3 years ago. This was pre-Sanjay Gupta, as I call it. Nobody was talking about using cannabis on children. I thought they were all out of their head. I didn't know anything about research that was going on in Israel. I didn't know about cannabis for cancer. I heard that it can get rid of nausea in chemo patients. It could help with glaucoma, but that was the extent of it. And when Abby and Ricky were put in my lab and started showing us all this science and research, I turned to my husband and I was like, honey, I think this is it. I think this is what we're supposed to do. I think this is how we're going to save our daughter. And I think that this is the road and the path that God wants us on. And, I said my prayers and I said, look, you lay the steps before me and you show me where to go and you give me the tools that I need to save my daughter, and I'll do whatever you say. And I have continued to listen to my instincts. I've continued to follow my heart, and I've continued to build upon my knowledge base and partner with some of the leading scientists, not just in America, but in the world, to try and get the answers that we need, not only for my child, but all these other children and adults that are suffering.
Wow. Well, God bless you for doing that. You know, I really commend you for number one, recognizing it so strongly. And you just said, well, you've had many moments like that, so you were able to, but it still takes a certain kind of person. It takes a certain amount of courage to walk, you know, your beliefs, to walk in those shoes and to walk in your faith and look at what you're doing for people because of it. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. But especially in the time period that we were in, you know, we were very scared of what people were going to say about us because we're respectable people. We're not criminals. We pay our taxes. We run really great companies that abide by the laws. And we've always made it a point to do everything we can to make our clients happy that we've worked with over the years. And, you know, we're just an average couple that, you know, wanted to have a baby. I want to be a soccer mom. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be the mom on the sidelines taking my kids to these sporting events that's going absolutely nuts with my face painted and my pom-poms. Like, that's the kind of people we are. And we were so afraid of the stigma that was around cannabis and the miseducation about the healing benefits and the propaganda and, you know, all these big pharmaceutical companies and the DEA and, you know, the feds and like all these people that are so against it and just criminalize it in such a horrific way. We didn't want people to judge us, and we didn't want to have to worry about our child being taken from us. So we were very quiet about this for a while. We started, we actually captured Sophie's very first dose using cannabis oil on Weed the People, which is the documentary that should be coming out later this year or beginning of next. And, you know, we kept it all very under wraps until we had enough evidence from her scans, and we had her oncologist going, yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan, this isn't something we've seen before. We now believe as well. And it wasn't until we had the support of our doctors that we went public because we were very afraid. And it was a welcoming surprise that of how accepted this was and how much people supported us on her Facebook page and in our community, because we'd established ourselves by this time as people who loved our daughter more than anything else in the world, and we would never do anything that we thought would harm her.
We'll be back in just a moment with more with Tracy.
Stay tuned. Janet will be right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
In today's business world, a helping hand or idea that doesn't come with an invoice is a treasured find. And if that happens to you, then you need to pay it forward to keep other entrepreneurs from making mistakes or getting a raw deal. It's called Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi, Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Central. Josephine is going to have the guests describe their accomplishments, the lessons they've learned, both good and bad, and then sharing those pieces of knowledge as we create a movement of paying it forward. For more information about Josephine, her business, and background, you can go to mymomknowsbest.com. Josephine Girassi has always been a problem solver. She saw this need and has turned it into a movement. It's Paying It Forward, with tips, tools, and advice and hard lessons learned. These pieces of knowledge can make a huge difference for you, your business, and others. So join us for Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi, Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com. Homeschooling? Have questions? Get your pen and paper ready. It's the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney. Fridays at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com. After a handsome blue-eyed Texan fell in love with Vivian at the Victoria Station in London, she found herself at DFW Airport with a tiny suitcase and a snazzy little duffel bag. Well, 25 years later, she is now happily married to that blue-eyed cowboy. They have 4 grown children ages 24 to 18 who became willing guinea pigs when she unwittingly stumbled upon the world of homeschooling. Wildflower Academy flourished for 15 years. They survived and thrived, and you can too. Vivian will be covering a wide range of issues that face homeschoolers. What do you do with kids in the summer? How to set up your one-room schoolhouse? How obedience is paramount? And what to do with those snakes? Plus, you'll be sharing ideas and insights that she gleaned from other homeschoolers. So join us for an engaging hour with the sociable homeschooler, Vivian McNinney. Friday afternoons at 5, 4 Central on TogiNet.com.
Always have my shoulder when you cry.
welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
And a big thank you to our sponsors at TogiNet.com, making Childhood Cancer Talk Radio possible. I'm Janet Demeter, your host, and I'm speaking today with Tracy Ryan, mom to Sophie, and CEO of CannaKids, an organization focused on cannabis oil therapy and holistic medicine to treat a variety of ailments, specializing in the treatment of pediatric cancer. Tracy, before the break, we were discussing the attitudes and the feelings around cannabis and cannabis therapy and all the miseducation out there, and how that was, even though that was a concern and a worry, you pushed through anyway and were surprised at people's positive reception.
I was very surprised, and I come from a very, very small town in Linden, Tennessee, and I was most worried about what my own family and my own community would say, because it's very, very conservative there. It's heavily Republican, and there's a stigma against all drugs there. And I was so happy to find that everyone in my community, including my own family, they trusted me and they believed in me, and they just knew that I wasn't the kind of person that would put something into my child's body that would be harmful to her in any way. And it's amazing how many eyes we were able to open and how many hearts and minds we were able to change by just being a family that was normal and, wasn't somebody that was known for drug use of any kind or any kind of druggy type of extracurricular activities. Like, these people really trusted us. And having established ourselves as these kinds of parents and these kinds of people that were hardworking and honest and, not going to jail for criminal activity, that they believed in us and they began to follow us and they began to do their own research. And if you actually do your own research, you will find very quickly that all of the naysayers that are out there have been completely guided by miseducation and propaganda in order to line their own pockets and to keep cannabis from being something that's legally consumed that could potentially hurt their businesses, like Big Pharma and the alcohol and tobacco industry. Oddly enough, the tobacco industry is now spending millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars trying to get into cannabis, which I've recently found out about, which I thought was quite hilarious, but expected. Oh, yeah. Everybody's trying to get in the game now. So it's definitely been a journey, and it's been a much more positive one than I ever expected, and one that I'm so grateful to be, a community I'm so grateful to be a part of.
Well, just keeping a shining light. I mean, that's what we have to do. We have to keep fighting for our kids. We have to keep saying that our kids' lives are more important than this cutthroat atmosphere of dog eat dog, money, money, money. That's the only thing that's really clouding. I mean, it's really, if you look at it as a thing in itself, it's really nothing. People's consciousness, people's awareness, people's choices are everything. And until people really realize that, they'll keep kind of being afraid. But I really commend what you're doing, because
Thank you.
I know, it was 2013 when you started this therapy?
Yeah, it was.
What was the legal climate at that time and right before, like in 2012?
Well, California was legal. Where we were, we did everything legally. Nothing that we've ever done has been illegal. We had a medical marijuana card before our child ever took her first dose. We had a caregiver's card for her that Ricky Nabby helped us find a doctor that would give out pediatric caregiver cards. All of this was filmed. Sophie's first dose was filmed, and all of it was done under California law. We've always abided by the law, even in the beginning when it was, several years ago. So, the federal government didn't have the restrictions on them now, or then that they have now. So that was always a fear that they could come in and mess with us and take our child or send CPS, and, the federal government could raid us. But we felt comfortable in California with them being where they were with cannabis as a medicine at the time.
That's just something that no parent should have to worry about when their child's already facing possible death.
Well, and I talk to parents all over the world. I mean, literally all over the world. I was just on a phone call with Israel yesterday of a mom, not a mom, but a daughter trying to save her father. And I, talk to people all over the United States every day. And it's the hardest thing in the world to tell a parent, I can't put medicine in the mail to you. I can't ship this to you. If you come out here and you set up residence and you get a medical marijuana card and you buy it from us, you still have to cross state lines. You're still risking going to jail. You're still risking having your child taken from you. And we're sometimes these people's last hope. And we are a very valuable last hope. We've had kids come to us with 30 days to live and no chance of survival on palliative chemos that are only for end-of-life pain. Within 90 days, they were cancer-free. And that was 10 months ago. And the kid's still alive, cancer-free, and thriving. Wow. And this kid would have died had they not had access to medicine, quality medicine. And it's sad. I have to tell people, these parents that are so desperate and begging me to help them, I'm like, I could go to prison for selling you this medicine. And I have a sick child of my own at home that's still in chemotherapy and that still takes cannabis every day. And she needs her mom. And I can't go to jail for somebody. And it's the hardest thing. It's the hardest part of my job.
Well, especially when you think that there's so many other drugs that are easy to get that are hugely toxic. And we're talking about, even though this is derived and processed somewhat, it's so close still to natural form. It's not like we get in there and chemically alter it, right?
Right, exactly.
And those natural things are the hardest to get. And the natural non-toxic things are the hardest to get investment in developing therapies for children. But we need them.
I have some very exciting news. CannaKids has partnered with a team out of Israel called the Technion Institute, which is like MIT in Israel, who have funding, a lot of funding. They have support of the medical community. They have from the Ministry of Health. They have support from their government. They have support from Big Pharma. And we are going to be, we are now beginning our research phase where we're going to be looking at all of these pediatric illnesses. I'm going to be sending my daughter's brain tumor samples there. I'm working on getting other brain tumor samples from other kids that have genetic mutations. And we're going to be able to test these brain tumor samples against 150 different strains of cannabis that will help us understand because it's not just THC, it's not just CBD that works for killing cancer or, helping with autism or getting rid of epilepsy. It's the entire terpene profile. It's the entire cannabinoid profile. We only test for 8 cannabinoids here in the United States. They test for 116 in Israel. And I now have access to this kind of technology. My new partner that's coming on board owns a 40,000 square foot FDA and DEA licensed lab and has been doing clinical research in Canada on mice for 5 years with a team there, and is also working with Kentucky doing nanotechnology where they can program the actual nanocells to target specific cancer cells. So I am diving head first into clinical research right now that's funded and supported and legal where I'm working out of the country in order to try and find answers for our children here in the States and our adults.
That's amazing. We will definitely keep in touch. I mean, I'm thinking, donate my DIPG cells.
Yeah, it's going to be this is the year. I have full faith that this is the year that we're going to really start getting some answers. And, one thing that I just want to touch on really quickly, back to the fear that people have, people are afraid of the high. And one of the things that there's a big misconception of out there is that these kids are just getting stoned out of their minds. And it's not the truth if you're working with someone who actually knows how to do dosing. And that's one of the stigmas that I want to remove and the fear that I want to remove. If you're working with the right groups of people that know how to dose properly, we start our children at anywhere from only 2 milligrams to 5 milligrams, depending on their disease. Epilepsy starts at 2 milligrams and cancer starts at 5 milligrams. Now, this is a dose that you barely feel any psychoactivity from at all. The kids are not knocked out. They're not, having out-of-body experiences. They're not, going into fits because they're paranoia. We're starting them at such small microdoses and working them up super gradually as their body builds a tolerance that we're not having parents come back and saying, this is too much for my kid. This is too much for me. I can't handle the high. They can't handle the high. Like, we're not getting those calls. We get one out of every 60 patients because some people have super, super high sensitivity to cannabis, and then they just have to stay at that dose. But these kids are very comfortable. Their pain is going away. They're able to eat. They're able to sleep. They're laughing. They're playing. They're riding their bikes again. They're able to go back to school and play with their friends. I had a little girl that goes to Children's Hospital with horrible, horrible leukemia. Her mom sent me a picture of her skin and bones, and within 2 weeks, she gained over 5 pounds, and she was 3 years old and 25 pounds. And she literally, you can't see her bones anymore after 2 weeks. They've taken her G-tube out. She's eating on her own. She's out of the hospital, which they were afraid she wasn't going to get out of the hospital. And she's laughing and telling her mom she loves her and she's learning how to walk again. And this all happened in 2 to 3 weeks. So there's just so many benefits, and we've got to be educating people more properly and more thoroughly, and remove this fear and educate people how to dose properly. So these worries of this psychoactivity and mental issues really starts to subside.
Well, definitely want to have you on several times to give us updates and to keep putting the word out there. And I'll encourage, podcast downloads way after the fact, because this is really valuable information for people. And one thing quickly I wanted to ask is what type of cancer typically do the child exhibit? Is it usually leukemia, or is it brain cancer? What is it typically?
It's everything. It's DIPG, it's neuroblastoma, medulloblastoma, ALL leukemia, AML leukemia. We've got neurodegenerative diseases. We've got cancers I've never even heard of. We've got lymphomas. With the adults, we have breast cancer, glioblastomas, every cancer you can imagine under the sun that you can list. We have treated most of them at this point.
Well, I'm going to have some more questions about your daughter. And for brain cancer after the break, you're listening at TogiNet.com to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure, powered by Jack's Angels Foundation. For pediatric brain tumor awareness and support, visit jacksangels.org for more information. After the break, we'll have advocacy news and talk more with Tracy Ryan, founder of CannaKids, and mom to Sophie, a little girl who is a little medical miracle and a living testament to the power of cannabis oil. Follow My CannaKids and Saving Sophie on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm Janet Demeter, and we'll right back.
Stay tuned. Janet will be right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
It's words you never heard.
There are more cats in U.S. households than any other pet. Most allurophiles or cat owners know that unlike dogs, taking Kitty for a ride in the car isn't any fun. I mean, you never see a cat hanging its head out the window, enjoying the breeze. Today's domestic cat is descended from a small Mid-Eastern wildcat. A group of kittens is called a Kindle, and a group of adult cats is a clouder. What's the word for those dust balls composed entirely of cat hair? Fluffernuggins. Personally, I like pigs better than either cats or dogs. Dogs are subservient and look up to man. Cats are aloof and look down on man. A pig, however, will look you in the eye and see as equal.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
Is there more living for you to do? Yes. Start living inspired. Be here for Living Inspired with Tricia Goyer, Thursday afternoons at 4, 3 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com. Tricia will dig deep into topics that matter most to women, inspiring women to make a change in their own lives and to make a difference in the world, and maybe even deep within their own hearts. Tricia is a wife, mom, speaker, family expert, and author of 24 books. For more information on Tricia and Living Inspired, go to her website, TriciaGoyer.com. That's TriciaGoyer.com. Tricia's vision is to be the voice of hope and possibility for women of all ages. Her intention is to serve ordinary women by encouraging extraordinary things with God's help. Tricia expresses real life, real hope for real women. Is there more living for you to do? Yes. Start living inspired. Living Inspired with Tricia Goyer. Thursday afternoons at 4, 3 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
welcome back to more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
And welcome back to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure, powered by Jack's Angels Foundation for Pediatric Brain Tumor Awareness and Research. I'm Janet Demeter, your host at TogiNet.com, where our focus for today's show is on Tracy Ryan, CEO of CannaKids.org, an organization devoted to providing cannabis oil and holistic therapy guidance and options to patients with serious ailments, especially children with cancer. We'll be joining Tracy in just a couple minutes after a brief bit of advocacy news for those of you interested in making a difference for kids with cancer. Vice President Biden has just opened an interactive Facebook page for you to let him know what's on your mind about Moonshot. Visit facebook.com/Vice President Biden. Folks, the childhood cancer advocacy movement needs your support. The only way our laws change to accommodate public demand and public need is for that public to let their hearts be known. Childhood cancer legislation has a history of disappearing. The STAR Act expands upon previous bills in a comprehensive manner. The Childhood Cancer Survivorship, Treatment, Access, and Research Act would expand opportunities for cancer research for children, improve efforts to identify and track childhood cancer incidents, enhance the quality of life for childhood cancer survivors, and ensure publicly accessible expanded access policies that provide hope for patients who have run out of options. Friends, less than 30% of the House has signed on to this. Please encourage your representatives to sign here in the United States. Until we begin letting our wishes be known to Congress, the President, and the NCI, nothing will change. To access your representative's contact information, visit for the House, www.house.gov/representatives/find, excuse me, and in the Senate, www.senate.gov/index. The most recent House resolution for childhood cancer is H.Res. 586, Chad and Jack's DIPG resolution calling for a national awareness week for DIPG and its thousands of departed heroes and brave kids currently fighting to stay alive, and more awareness for the neglect of pediatric cancer in our medical research system. Using diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma as an example, DIPG, we learn how the second most common pediatric brain tumor is responsible for the majority of brain tumor deaths in children each year, yet there has been no progress in its terminal prognosis in over 40 years, with an average of 20,000 years of life lost each year. H.Res. 586 calls for more consideration of low survival rate cancers and years of life lost in the research grant process with the NCI. To follow this bill, go to jacksangels.org's advocacy page. There are links there. I'd like to briefly share with you that on this very day, February 25th, 2016, Nancy Goodman of Kids vs. Cancer is going before the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs to speak for the continuation of the Creating Hope Act. Kids vs. Cancer's first step was to incentivize companies to develop drugs specifically for pediatric cancers and other rare diseases. In 2012, Congress passed the Creating Hope Act, which has created nearly $800 million in market incentives at no cost to the taxpayer for companies that get a new drug for pediatric cancer approved by the FDA. As part of the 21st Century Cures Bill, which passed the House, the Creating Hope Act is up for renewal, and Nancy is urging the Senate to renew as well. There are many important points for which Nancy is fighting for our kids. She specifically asserts that we need to address the lack of access. Seriously ill children have to novel, unapproved drugs, not only by one-off compassionate use applications, but even in clinical trials to address the number one cause of death in children in the United States. That's why initiatives such as Creating Hope and the Kids Initiative are so important. Please follow Nancy's advocacy work at www.kidsversuscancer.org. And very quickly, some events coming up. The Smashing Walnuts Foundation Gala is March 19th in the Washington, D.C. area. This foundation was inspired by Gabriella Miller of the Gabriella Miller Kids First Act. Ellen Miller, her mom, is one of our country's great advocates for children with cancer, and Smashing Walnuts is dedicated to curing pediatric brain cancer. Michael Mosier Foundation's main event will be on the first weekend of May in Washington, D.C., focused on DIPG research. Michael inspired an amazing fundraising event last year, 2 weeks before his death, deaths to DIPG. His mother, Jenny, heads this amazing foundation and one of the main contributors to the DIPG Collaborative. Visit defeatdipg.org for more information. Out here in California, the first ever Relay for Jack, benefiting pediatric brain tumor research at the Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute. This event is May 28th, 2016, in honor of the first National DIPG Awareness Week. Relay for Jack is an ultra-distance 8-hour relay for serious runners, advocates, and families alike wanting to raise funds for an innovative new research project for DIPG, the deadliest pediatric brain tumor. For more information, visit relayforjack.org. The Alliance for Childhood Cancer will host this year's Childhood Cancer Action Days in Washington, D.C. on May 16th and 17th. Visit the Alliance on Facebook or on the web at it's allianceforchildhoodcancer.org. And then CureFest 2016 National Movement begins with the first steps on September 17th and 18th this year. Visit curefestdc.org for more information on that. I don't want to spend any more time on announcements because we have a wonderful guest today. You're listening to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio on TogiNet.com, just finishing up our advocacy news portion. I'm very happy to rejoin Tracy Ryan, founder of CannaKids, a company dedicated to providing effective cannabis therapy to those with serious disease and ailments, specializing in the treatment of pediatric cancer. You can learn more about CannaKids at CannaKids.org. And follow CannaKids at MyCannaKids on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So, Tracy, before the break, we were discussing a number of things, including a new partnership you have with a group in Israel that's very exciting. Mm-hmm. And also, this came out of the fact that we have to go out of the country sometimes and collaborate with other like-minded individuals when we're having some hurdles with the law. Yeah. And with public opinion, public misconception. And I just wanted to ask you also, with the treatment of cannabis and all the research they're doing, for example, in Israel that you were starting to tell me about, I know that in the dish, it probably does really well with brain cancer. What about crossing that blood-brain barrier?
Well, that's where we go from the 96 plate or the 365 plate to mouse models. And from the mouse models, that's where you start to, what they do is they take these brain tumor cells, and they've got a huge library of them, they implant them into the mice, and then they take the strains that have the most promise as far as killing all of the cells, and then they put those in mouse models. And once they have proved that theory in mouse models, they have the ability to run full human trials in Israel. Right now, they've got a pain trial going on with over 1,000 patients that they're studying. So the next step is in humans, because crossing them, something in mice and proving that it works in mice isn't going to be the exact result that you're going to see in humans, but it's going to be close enough to qualify that, this isn't doing any kind of harm. And I've spoken with, our scientist, and he's shown me his past results, that where you can put cannabis in with healthy brain tissue where there's no cancer cells, and these healthy cells are being left alone. So we really hope to disprove the propaganda that's out there about this causing any type of brain damage whatsoever. And then going into those human trials, since the medical community and the Ministry of Health does support this, is something that's an easy next step in Israel. And then using that information and that scientific research to bring into the United States and say, look, here we are. This is what we have. We've done this in the 96 plate. We've done this in the mouse models. We're doing this in humans. It's working. It's helping patients, which we already know anecdotally it is. We've got oncologists from some of the top hospitals in California that sends us patients, every week, sometimes every day, because they see their patients getting well when they otherwise were supposed to be dead. But we'll have now the scientific evidence to back it up, where we can really start to fight this war against the federal government, who is keeping us from doing these trials here in the U.S. that are so desperately needed.
Well, we had Catherine the Brave, little Katie King. Her mom was on the show, and the miracle of miracles, she's not using steroids. Okay, steroids have been protocol for decades. huge amounts. These children get horribly, their bodies get bloated. We know that regular steroid use at that dosage, folks. It's not like, after surgery, I'm taking my steroids. This is like super heavy duty because it will provide a little bit of shrinkage in the tumor and will lessen the symptoms somewhat with, hoping to save them. But in the long run, it only helps the damage. It's awful.
Yeah, it's terrible on the organs. It's absolutely terrible. We love Catherine the Brave. She is one of those little girls we just adore.
Seeing her do so well despite, tumor progression and everything.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Even if it, DIPG is awful. We still don't have anything for it, but just to improve the quality of life like that is so amazing.
Is what we're doing. We're seeing a lot of life extension, and almost every single one of our DIPG patients is off steroids, just so you know. This is not
awesome.
uncommon.
Oh my God, that's
not
huge
uncommon.
News just there.
we had a boy named Charlie that's on our website. Unfortunately, he's passed because cannabis does not, DIPG is the one cancer that we haven't seen shrinkage in with cannabis oil, using cannabis alongside of it. But we have seen a lot of life extension. And with our one child, Charlie, that we had, that we just loved and adored as well. We get so close to these families and these kids. His oncologist said, we're going to put him on this new chemo that's experimental. He's 100% going to have to be on steroids. We don't even know if his brainstem can handle this chemo because of the amount of swelling that it causes. It could end up hurting him more than it helps him. And he'll have to be on steroids constantly. Little Charlie never needed steroids. There was never any swelling. And unfortunately, the experimental drug did not work, but his end-of-life care and his transition was so much more peaceful and beautiful and easy for him to get through because he had cannabis on board.
Right. Oh, and it's so important. End of life. We'll return to this when we come back. You're listening to Childhood Cancer Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. I'm Janet Demeter, your host, and I'm speaking with Tracy Ryan, founder of CannaKids, and we're featuring also her daughter Sophie and her journey with cannabis therapy. With more information at savingsophie.org. Childhood Cancer Talk Radio is brought to you by Jack's Angels Foundation for pediatric brain tumor awareness and support and advocacy for children with cancer. For more information, visit jacksangels.org. We'll be back in just a moment with more of our show after these messages from our TogiNet sponsors.
Right back with more on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, where kids come first for the cure.
This year's Super Bowl will air in 180 countries, and with that infamous coin toss, for one day, most people will toss out their New Year's resolutions to lose weight. The Super Bowl accounts for 7% of an entire year of chicken wing sales. 48 million Americans will opt for having food delivered, with pizza franchises seeing their sales double on game day. Domino's alone looks forward to selling over 11 million pizzas on Super Bowl Sunday. What's a word for food that contains unknown ingredients? Acampucky. Americans will eat over 100 million pounds of guacamole and 8 million pounds of tortilla chips on game day. What's a word for those folks who call in sick the morning after a little too much indulgence? Arfarfanoffs.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
Congratulations on being the proud owner of an adorable, soft, cuddly, sweet-smelling, smiling, cooing, hungry, tired, gassy, screaming little bundle of joy. So now what? Where's the owner's manual for this thing? Where are my instructions? Right here. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet.com. Infant care specialist Blythe Lipman has worked with babies for over 20 years and works extensively with new parents, providing workshops, in-home visits, tips, and daily phone calls to ease those frazzled nerves. With Baby and Toddler Instructions, you can get the advice you need on how to survive and enjoy your baby's first year. For more information on Blythe and how she can help you, go to babyinstructions.com. From 32 ways to stop a baby from crying to 14 ways to get a baby to eat and so much more. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet.com.
more great conversation on Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, because every child's life deserves hope. Here's Janet.
Hey, we're back. I'm Janet Demeter, your host with Childhood Cancer Talk Radio, and I'm speaking with Tracy Ryan, founder of CannaKids at CannaKids.org. We've been having a great conversation about her work with cannabis, demystifying it, educating people about it, and helping people with it. And I was wanting to relay to her that a lot of my focus on the show is with brain cancer because it has been so neglected for research, and it's responsible for most of the deaths. And most scientists agree that if we did figure more out about it, we'd know more about the brain, we'd know more about biology, we'd probably cure cancer, along with all the other research. It's definitely worthy of investment. And one of the issues and challenges of it is, especially with, I know, Tracy, you mentioned DIPG is one of the hardest ones to get a reaction from. I think it's because it's like right in the center of the head. I mean, if there was anything harder to reach, it would be that tumor. And a lot of some of the folks we've had on here, just even last week, were, again, in another country, in the UK, they're doing some really innovative things with robotics and surgery and catheters and delivery systems directly to the brain. And it's like, oh my God, imagine that in conjunction with cannabis research. Can you imagine?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The DIPG being in the brainstem is the most protected part of the body. And unfortunately, for anybody who understands the science behind cannabis and the fact that we have CB1 and CB2 receptors all throughout our body, most heavily in the brain, the brainstem is the one area of our body that has very, very, very few receptors. And then you partner that with the fact that it is more highly protected than anywhere else. It's just almost impossible, not only for cannabis to get in there, but these chemotherapy agents, the radiation, it's the cut, poison, burn mentality does not work on these at all. And these poor children just don't have any hope. And these great viral trials that are coming out and nanotechnologies and laser ablation surgeries, I'm so thrilled to see the advancements just in the last 3 years since my daughter has gotten sick with brain cancers, because they are so hard to treat. I mean, my daughter's, even though it's not in the brainstem, and she has a really good long-term survival prognosis, it is a nightmare trying to keep my daughter's tumor controlled. It does fantastic on chemo and cannabis, but then you get her off the treatments and it can start to grow again. And when you're dealing with the brain and the blood-brain barrier and everything that comes along with it, these therapies are, they just need to be advanced. And I'm very happy to be sitting where I am today. I truly believe that in my lifetime, in my daughter's lifetime, we will see a cure. I believe that cannabis has helped to light a fire in some way, because Big Pharma doesn't want to be, they don't want to be sitting around while cancer gets cured using something natural that we can all grow. They also need to come up with their therapies as well. And I feel like it's become this race for a cure. So I don't care who cures it. I don't care if it's cannabis that cures it. I don't care if it's viral trials that cure it. I just want lives to be saved. I want these kids to get well. I want these adults to get well. And I want this to stop being such a worry for people. I now live in daily fear because of all the crap that's pumped into my food, the GMOs, the pesticides. Now I'm afraid that I'm going to get cancer, where I never worried about it before when I lived outside of this bubble. But now I just know too much.
Amen to that. Absolutely. I'll just let you know also the reason why I talked about our little relay. It's the first one. It's the relay for Jack that we're doing in May is benefiting this project from CCTR2. These guys were on, I think they were on my 4th show. They were awesome. It's this nonprofit biotech started by an NCI researcher and an amazing advocate for our kids, Jonathan Agan and Dr. Charles Keller. And this microchip, basically, that they're developing this microchip. That's the project that we're trying to fund, and it tests how 12 different medicines, because often the issue is finding out which one's going to work. If you're going to put something in their brain, you better know what you're doing, because these poor kids have really sacrificed their lives, but for good. But anyway, it'll do that. The technology of it is on our website, because I don't want to take up showtime talking about it, but it's just really cool that kids now, they're involving Oregon Institute of Technology with this research team, and it's all for the kids. It's like it's making opportunities for young scientists to be able to do what they want to do without worrying about, there's no money in that. We can't help because there's money in that. Right. It's very hopeful.
Yeah, I'm so optimistic right now and so full of hope. And I truly believe that not only will all of this research in all of these different fields, not only do I feel like it's going to really pay off quickly, but I'm just thrilled to know that there are people out there finally starting to fight for our children after we've had one new drug developed in the last 20, 25 years for pediatric cancer as a whole. And
I gotta say that CCTR just submitted 2 last year. That was their first year of operation. Can you believe it?
Fantastic.
At the FDA.
But
fantastic. You're right. It's been 30 years.
But there's one on the market. They still have to go through all these clinical trials, and then they have to, get approved through those before they actually become a mainstream medicine. And I feel like we are. Well, I know we are on the cutting edge of what's going to go down in the history books as the medical revolution. I really believe that we're all right now inking our place in history, and I'm just so proud to feel like one day my grandkids will look back and be like, Granny helped make that happen, and she helped save Mom so that Mom could have us, and now we are living and thriving because her and all these other people that really wanted to fight for the children and fight for the lives of those who loved have been able to successfully make a difference. And I, that's all I want. I want my little girl to be able to grow up and have her own babies one day and experience the love that I have for Sophie and the happiness that she brings me. And I want her to have that with her own kids. I want her to have this happy, healthy life. And I want that for all the children in the world. They deserve more. These little babies, they've never had their first kiss. They've never had a boyfriend. They've never graduated high school or gone to prom, and they deserve to live those things that we have had the ability and been so lucky to those things that we've been so lucky to experience in our lives. They deserve that. They deserve to have a beautiful life, and I won't stop fighting until we've got better answers and we've got better therapies and better alternatives for these little kids. I just won't. It's my heart and soul. I'm just so invested in it now.
Well, I'm so grateful that you're there doing that. You're one of my heroes for kids this week and for the year.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful to you, and I'll just let you know. I'll kind of confess that when we were going through it, 2011, 2012, Jack died in July of 2012, and it was so hard. We did everything we could alternatively to support his little body. He was too frail to give chemotherapy to, and we knew it wouldn't do anything anyway. And then I heard about Cannabis and little Kashi, who was doing, I forget the name of the foundation, and I had it written down. And I was terrified. I wanted to do it, but I was terrified, and even a friend of mine brought me some, and of course, without any guidance or whatever, I was like, well, I know his body's very frail, so I tested it on, how mine would react to it, and I had a horrible reaction, probably because I didn't know what I was doing.
You took too much. Yeah,
and so I gave it back, and I was afraid. Then I was paranoid that, for weeks, that someone was going to take my son away, because I tested it on myself, and I was still nursing him. He was 3, but I was still nursing him. And I can't tell you that no one should go through that. That's just ridiculous.
No, it's not.
Stupid.
And that's why I am speaking out as much as I am. And that's why I'm getting up on my soapbox and screaming from the rooftops and talking to anybody who will listen, because we know how to dose right. We know how to avoid these negative situations that could end in a much more positive response. We know how to care for these children as if they were our own, because I'm already doing it. I've been doing it for 2.5 years now and working with thousands of families. we treat these families and we treat these children as if they are our own kids and as if they are part of our own family. And we make sure that they have everything that they need. We handhold. They all have my cell phones. I get text messages sometimes at 2 and 3 in the morning, and I answer them if I hear my phone buzz. We want to build this template that other people can use and other collectives can use and other caregivers can use, so that people are getting accurately dosed. They're getting quality medicine. They're getting tested medicine. They're not getting something that somebody cooked in their garage or in their backyard where there's molds and bugs flying around and God knows what else. Like we make our medicine in a scientific lab with PhD scientists and organic chemists that have 20 years of experience in a laboratory. And we want to raise the standard. We want to raise the bar. We want everybody to treat this like a real medicine and not just something they cook in a barrel in the back. There are still a lot of negatives in the industry, but there are also so many positives. And if you can find the right people, and if you can find your way to us, or you can find your way to some other collectives in California or in the United States that are quality, and you know how to ask the right questions, and you know what kind of answers to look for in order to qualify your caregiver and your oil makers, then it's not as scary anymore. And, CannaKids hopes to really do a lot of work, advocacy work this year, especially with our new partner coming in who's so graciously financially supporting us. We hope to have the means and tools that we need to reach further and provide more quality support and education.
Absolutely. And I hope with the advocacy work and all of us supporting you too, that we can get more states to open up to this. I know that there was something going on with one of I think it was the Assembly people in Texas lately. It's just there are too many states where it's illegal and they won't even consider it. I mean, even my town in California is no medical marijuana. There are places that just ban it. So I can't thank you enough for what you do. I wish you were around when my son was going through it, but you know what? Everything happens for a reason, at the right time, in the right place. Mm-hmm. And tell me quickly how Sophie is before we go, because we're going to have to go in just a second. But please tell me how she is.
She's doing great. We're going to have a long road with her tumor. There's always ups and downs, but we had a scan on Monday, and there was a ton of tumor shrinkage. There's a little spot that might be getting a little bit brighter, but we're staying the course because it's just dissolving. Her vision is perfect. Her hearing is perfect.
CannaKids.org, everybody. Visit.
Thank you.
You have found inspiration from today's show. For more about Janet Demeter and her mission, visit jacksangels.org. As founder and president, Janet strives to assure that children with cancer and their parents have a voice, raising awareness for the need to prioritize our children in the quest for a cure.